Welcome back. Here on More 4 News, we aim to bring you thought-provoking and sometimes controversial opinions. And tonight, we have the views of a man who is banned from entering Britain. Steve Best is a philosophy professor in Texas. He's also an outspoken critic of animal testing. And in recent weeks, he's been told by the Home Office his defence of animal rights activism amounted to fomenting and justifying terrorist violence. So they decided his presence in this country is non-conducive to the public good. Professor Best denies promoting terrorism, and he claims the ban is unjustified. So we went to Texas to ask him to explain his case, and this is his personal view.
A few years ago, I decided to take a public and very controversial stand in support of the Animal Liberation Front. The ALF is rooted in the philosophy of animal rights and therefore rejects any and all forms of animal exploitation as unjust and intolerable. It uses tactics of property destruction and sabotage to undermine the ability of industries exploiting animals. But it describes itself as a non-violent group that attacks only the property of exploiters and never the exploiters themselves. I came out in favor of the ALF because I concluded that their actions are just. Governments, animal exploitation industries, and mass media characterize the ALF as violent terrorists. But in fact, I see them as counter-terrorists and as freedom fighters. The ALF is a new justice movement that defends the rights of innocent beings who are under attack. It is the industries and the government who are the real terrorists. I believe that no door, no law, no government, and no cop should ever stand in the way between an animal and its freedom. I wish that legal methods of freeing animals from captivity, of granting them rights and justice, were adequate, but unfortunately, they are not. Animals are too important a resource and commodity for corporations to voluntarily free them. The biomedical and pharmaceutical industries are the third largest contributor to the British economy. Consequently, they take any threat to the interest of these industries as a threat to the UK as a whole. After the 7/7 bombings, the British government stated that the rules of the game have changed. The Home Office drafted new rules of unacceptable speech that grant the Home Office the authority to ban any non-UK citizen alleged to promote or advocate violence or terrorism. In August 2005, I received a letter from the Home Office that condemned me for supporting the ALF and banned me from the UK. But I'm not a member of the ALF. I have no connection whatsoever to the ALF. I've never advocated violence against anyone. I'm experiencing state repression for the thought crime of advocating illegal actions that are necessary to win justice and freedom for animals. If we accept the definitions of the Home Office of the ALF as violent and terrorist, I'm guilty as charged. By their own newly minted definitions, the UK reserves the right to ban me. But it's the right of a police state and a closed society which is threatened by the views with which it disagrees. Muslim clerics should not be allowed to mobilize people to commit terrorist actions in England. But there is a world of difference between a philosophy professor advocating nonviolent tactics and a Muslim extremist fomenting terrorist acts against British citizens. I define terrorism as any intentional act to injure or kill a living, sentient, innocent being for scientific, political, or economic purposes. On that definition, the Animal Liberation Front hardly a terrorist force. In fact, they are counter-terrorists who stop the killing of untold number of animal lives. But the British government and vivisectors and the entire animal exploitation industry I hold to be directly responsible for terrorist and violent crimes against animals. They're the true terrorists because they exploit and injure and kill millions of animals for their own political, economic, and scientific purposes. From the Boston Tea Party to the Civil Rights Movement, Activists and philosophers have understood the difference between the institution of law and the principles of the right. When the law does not reflect the right, it is the obligation of citizens to change the laws, breaking them if necessary, in order to promote the right. My speech may be unpopular, but it is precisely unpopular and controversial speech that free speech rights are designed to protect, as opposed to mainstream and conformist speech. An open society will respect and protect those free speech rights, but a closed society will reject and deny them.
A controversial personal perspective there from Steve Best, who is banned from entering Britain. Of course, the ALF itself advocates attacks only against property, but scientists connected to animal research have recently been the targets of threats, fire bombings and of physical violence by some animal rights activists. On tomorrow night's programme, Dr Simon Festing of the Research Defence Society gives us his personal view in defence of animal experimentation. In tonight's More Forum, we asked you, is scientific research on animals justified? There's just time for one comment from today's online discussion. I'm sure if an activist family member was diagnosed with cancer, they would want everything possible to cure them, said one correspondent. Now, if you want to take part, log on to our website at www.channel4.com/more4news. We post our issue of the day at lunchtime, and you'll even find instructions for sending your comments on video from your mobile phone. We'll run as many as we can. Tonight, we're going to leave you with some we collected ourselves. Do have a very good evening.
There's no medical justification for harming animals in any way for experimentations when there are plenty of people willing to help in studies, medical studies, that would prove far more beneficial.
I think it's acceptable to conduct experiments on animals providing they're strictly necessary for medical purposes.
I feel that just as we eat them, we can experiment with them to make medicines that will benefit humankind.
If it's necessary in order to get drugs that will save humans and probably save other animals, yes, of course it is.
I think it's very unjustifiable to experiment on animals. If we experiment on animals, might as well experiment on human beings. It's the same thing.